for cutting costs and also reducing the emission, purpose like that. And in those countries, we found that the public awareness for the GHG control is quite high level, so it's quite optimistic for the first group. And for the second group, we find that those parties which haven't ratified MARPOL Annex 6, we found the willingness of ship owners and operators for the using of energy efficiency, is very important in that case. So it depends, from countries to country, and in those countries, basically the operational measures are applied in those countries. So that is the second group. But generally speaking, in this region, this region is quite active in the using of energy efficiency technologies and measures. So you find that the operational measures and also technical measures are widely applied in those areas. And recently, also the ship owners, they would like to use alternative fuels and LNG, ammonia, etc., to try new energies for the reduction of the energy efficiency, emission. And so also in some areas, developed areas, we use the shore power. So also very much good for the industry. So yes, so the barriers basically in these areas we can find out just very much similar, to the research report introduced by Dr. Bicho and Khalid Bicho. So I want to skip most of this. Yes, so the national policies we need to develop for them. And also in some nations, they are struggling into the MARPOL Annex 6 for the air company. So in some least developing countries, and the ship, ships are aging, very fastly. So more than 20 years old. So it takes time, I think to apply the technology. This becomes a kind of a restriction to do this, to update technologies and use new technologies for GHG reduction. So back to the MTCCs, I think two of my colleagues have introduced the MTCCs individually. So MTCC network was a brainchild and idea of Dr. Jules Matiko and of IMO. So at the beginning of this very important influential program. For MTCC Asia, we launched this center in the year 2017. So
3 more minutes, please, Mr. Wan.
Okay, so it's really very much exciting, to have all those people to do this. Good, and also, we developed a very good network for that. And in terms of the technologies, we designed a packaged form. A systematic solution for all of this. Use, for instance, the trimming optimization technologies, fuel oil collection system, and also we developed the global ship energy efficiency or monitoring GHG emission monitoring system, and also recently we are developing the just-in-time technologies, etc., etc. So yes, we also developed a maritime knowledge bank and also the exchange platform for technologies like this. Okay, to give you an idea about that. So we published the 2 guidelines and sent them to the ships. And also we have wide range of capacity building programs in various countries in Asia. And we host international conferences like that. Yes, we achieved, we educated and trained the professionals and circulate document to the vessels, guidelines, technical guidelines for that. etc., etc. And for future, we have a big plan. I mean, under the leadership and guidance of the PCU of IMO in the major partnership department, we will take actions in both the capacity building programs and also the technology development. And mostly important, we would like to tailor-made and adapt technologies for the developing countries. I mean, we should shoot them their needs efficiently. So of course, we also make general contributions to IMO for that purpose. Okay, so thank you very much. Very brief introduction to for the MTCC Asia's work.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much there, Mr. Ruan. Let me move now swiftly over to the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center in the Pacific. And with that, Mr. Zula Mohammed, please. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, all the way from the Pacific Island, from Fiji. Thank you very much, Craig, for the introduction. I'll get into the presentation right away. So I'll be talking on 5 topics today. And the first is with regards to the regional perspective. As for this section here, the leaders, Pacific leaders' vision for the Blue Pacific emphasizes on the collective Hello.
We can still just about hear you there, Zula,
so,
if you'd like to carry on.
Sorry. So in the Pacific, the maritime sector offers a wide range of opportunities ranging from fisheries, maritime tourism to leisure and shipping. And these sectors provide essential service, jobs, and resources for the community. So in the region, the direction is already set by the leaders to fully decarbonize the Pacific transport sector, while also mobilizing the Pacific members to advocate for the same targets within the international shipping sector. So targets in the NDC and for the region have guided medium and long-term actions to meet these objectives. And we are working with the stakeholders to build on the 2020-2030 program and measures above, which requires vessel replacement, port development programs, and large-scale financing in the Pacific to achieve full decarbonization objectives, which are basically being discussed by the leaders. So the development need to support community-based approach to the mobility of people and goods in the Pacific, with an emphasis on the need and rights of community to mobilize. So the regional framework and declaration also needs to be translated into the adoption of national policies and laws, where MTCC comes into place. And we have been working continuously with these stakeholders to build legal capacity development in country during our regional workshop and national workshop. And in addition to this, MTCC Pacific is also working on introducing new technologies together with adaptation of technical standards. And this is essential to introduce standards for new marine technologies that will be fitted on board vessels in order to maximize the benefit from these technologies adapted to the environment and operation of ships. So capacity building has been the core requirement for the Pacific countries to understand the importance of this transition. And in this case, MTCC Pacific has been providing capacity building activities to the Pacific Island countries and territories to comply with the international instruments, and at the same time to facilitate implementation of energy efficient measures in the maritime sector. These workshops that we have conducted have provided information to port and ship operators on measures towards energy efficiency, technical and operational measures, importance of data, and how data can enable MTCC Pacific to provide support with reducing GHG emissions and reliance on fossil fuel. This has also supported informed policy decision making at regional level and also at national level, and it has given an opportunity to ports and ship operators to invest in new technologies. In saying this, MTCC has also developed a ship energy efficiency management plan, which is integrated with the safety document on board the vessel to raise the standard of the safety and energy efficiency on domestic ships. And with the relevant data collected, we have been providing technical advice on the type of technology to uptake on board the vessel, and also working with the ship owners from design phase through testing and commissioning, and have achieved significant results to date. Noting the success of this center, I want to highlight the three important approaches that we have taken. The first is the private sector engagement, which is critical, acknowledging the important role of the industry and the business in the maritime sector, and there are challenges to invest in new technology and operations. The other is with regards to the technology and operational measures, where the industry agrees that the transition to low carbon future in maritime transport will require infrastructure development and a combination of technical and operational measures, including options such as traditional navigation for inter-island mobility for people and goods in harmony with culture and heritage. And lastly, we have emphasized the need for collaboration, cooperation, and partnership between all stakeholders to achieve the decarbonization goal. The needs and the barriers for the Pacific region, we have held various workshops around the target countries and have collected information from various sources, including consultations that we have held during national and regional workshop. And during these events, we have widened the consultation in the regional event to the whole region, including the territories, to review the first round of consultation results and prioritize the action for the short and medium and long-term goals. So we had examined existing initiative as well as available technology that can contribute to our objectives. And we have identified the barriers to technology transfer, such as lack of reliable and accurate data on energy consumption, maritime GHGs, the absence of policies, laws, and standard, lack of capacity to update new technologies, limited finance resources within the private sector and government to address these environmental challenges. And some of the technologies which are readily available in the region have been demonstrated as pilot projects on domestic inter-island vessels. More and more technologies are, of course, available on the international market, with some having limitations. Some are immature, while others have proven their efficiency. However, most of the measures that are being used on a variety of the vessel with greater capacity than those operated in the Pacific Island countries and are built more recently. So MTCC Pacific has developed countries profile, domestic fleets countries profile that include private and public ownership. Also indicates the number of vessels that are operated within their EEZ. This information is then further broken down into table and graph with the least details of vessel type, length, gross tonnage, age, and engine power. So this information is then used to analyze the probability of the existing vessel that
More
will
minutes,
be
please,
still.
Mr. Mohammed.
Yeah, noted. So that will be operational in 2030, and in short-term financing and transition to low-carbon maritime transport needs, there needs to be a focus on the above measures as proof of concept in countries with operators able to champion the initiative and commit to small-scale investment. Some of the opportunities and learning areas. So our pilot project has already demonstrated the potential and benefit of uptaking new technologies and operation in the Pacific maritime transport sector. Reconciling and modeling the data with information related to the Pacific fleet will inform baseline targets, policy, and decision making. Developing port infrastructure and operation also requires a long-term vision. Our technical assistant has ensured an integrated approach towards increased resilience of the infrastructure, sustainable economic development, compliance with international standard, best practices, and reduced carbon footprint and environmental impact. Currently, we are working on Pacific Ports 2030-2050 vision that would integrate objective measures and clear targets, which is a vision of resilient, green, and clean port in the Pacific Island region. So in many Pacific Island countries, there's a narrow industrial base, weak private sector, small domestic market limits employment opportunities. Now this can trigger frequent turnover that in turn increases demand for new training opportunities. We have been developing capacity in the private sector and introducing new technologies, new concept vessels in the region. And of course, there's a need to develop new qualification for users and providers. So MTCC has developed distant and flexible learning modules on climate mitigation that can be accessed by the ship operators in the region to complete at their own time and pace. Lastly, just like to highlight some of the success stories of the MTCC Pacific. So the main objective of this pilot project was to introduce renewable energy on board domestic vessels to expand the knowledge of application of renewable energy in Pacific Island countries and using it as a testing, training, teaching, and learning platform to deliver this project, which will assist in promotion of low carbon technology uptake in the region. So the vessel owner, to highlight, has been saving around 29,000 euros annually from this project and reducing around 226 tons of GHG emissions. So in order to achieve 40 to 50% reduction by 2030, we need to start making decisions now in terms of choosing the combination of technologies, investment and payback period, which is less than 10 years. So either the ship is scrapped in 2013 or we will have to look at further investment for our target in 2050. For the ports component, the green port implemented in the Pacific has created an environment for improved efficiency of port infrastructure and operations, and itself improve quality of working and living environment for port workers and people. So this concept had provided opportunities for new and innovative incentive towards climate mitigation in the maritime industry and green shipping, and has also demonstrated through significant and promising result. Thank you again. Maybe
Thank you very
I'd
much
like
there.
to
Thank you very much.
highlight.
Sorry to push you on there, Mr. Mohammed, but I am aware that we are very short on time. So I'd like to immediately go over to Irvin Vargas, representing the fifth of the 5 MTCCs. He's Technical Director of the MTCC in Latin America. The floor is yours, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good day. For me, it's a pleasure to participate today in the Zero and Low Emission Innovation Forum on behalf of the International Maritime University of Panama, which is the host institution of the MTCC Latin America.
You wish to share your slides?
Yeah. I go to share.
It's just coming live now.
Okay,
there we go.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. For me, it's a pleasure to participate today in the Zero and Low Emission Innovation Forum on behalf of the International Maritime University of Panama, which is the host institution of the MTCC Latin America and whole MTCC Latin American team. I would like to thank the organizer for letting us to be a part of this great and exclusive event. I am really glad to be here presenting the topic, Regional Reflection, Challenge and Opportunity for Innovation and Developing New Solutions for Latin American Region. The information that I will share today will include general regional reflection and MTCC Latin American work, challenge for innovation and developing new solutions in Latin America, and opportunity for innovation and developing new solutions in our region. Latin America consists of the countries shown here. When it's come to identify the challenge and opportunity, seem like we are all fighting against the same issues: environmental, political, social, economic, inequality, state capacity, and others, especially in the new era post-pandemic. We understand the fundamental role that our region plays for the sustainable development globally. The decision that we take today will certainly affect our future in all aspects. It is necessary to take the right action now to enable a better, safer, more efficient, and sustainable future. However, to reach our goals, we must first identify the challenge and difficulties faced by the Latin American countries, especially within maritime field. The state capacity, sometimes not adequate infrastructure, limited access to new technology, limited resource. The new training restriction post-pandemic COVID-19, maritime-related hot topic with low understanding and competence in our region. The difficulties adopting and implementing new regulation in our region. Few maritime-related research. Here is the MTCC Latin American continues playing a significant role in the region, being the focal point and the hub of technology, innovation, and development in Latin America. We are, with different stakeholders and multidisciplinary experts, are getting involved in all our activity, especially in this 2021. We have identified the road to an efficient and sustainable future, include capacity and competence building. That is important and required for the proper understanding of the current situation and the possible solution we have. Also, the necessity to conduct more research and study to come up with a strategic decision and solution. In this aspect, innovation is also required to raise a sustainable work. In fact, I am glad to share with all of you today, for the first time, we are going to present in the Innovation Forum our MTCC Latin American Pilot Project 3 as a part of our innovative agenda. Another key element that we add in the MTCC Latin America give a particular attention is the industry partnership and the strategic alliance that provide unhelpful information and a broad perspective of the reality of the maritime industry. Likewise, the technical cooperation and the involvement of the Maritime Administration has allowed to the MTCC Latin America to expand our scope of work to strengthen the cooperation, communication, and participation among the Latin American countries. As I just mentioned, we are focused on the training, activities, and development of competence in our region. That is why during this 2021, we developed 3 capacity building activities. The first on April, the International Virtual Conference with the topic, Decarbonization in the Shipping Industry and the Challenge for Latin America. These 3 activities of 2021 include the participation of Maritime Administration, Class Society, Panama Canal, experts, and the second activity in June, let's talk about ballast water with Alfa Laval. The third activity in this month, MAPC 76, and its technical outcome toward a decarbonized shipping industry. Taking advantage of our participation in the MAPC 76 and learn information and update received to share some important technological knowledge with our region and beyond. We are glad to share that over 1,200 participants in total over 25 countries around the world attended our 3 activities in this year. This is our commitment with the maritime industry. We continue our effort promoting the regional technical cooperation and the adoption of new technology and the solution for the proper implementation of regulation and the best practice to fight with climate change and the devastating effect of national, regional, and international levels. Today, we are presenting our pilot project 3, which is related to establishment of the Maritime Big Data Management Center with the MTCC Latin America, with the objective to measure the real emission times and maritime operation monitoring in Panama territorial waters in terms of sustainability and efficiency through a smart model to allow us the adoption of the best practice in the maritime industry. This project will develop with collaboration of the UN Big Data, Gabriel Fuentes from the Norwegian Center of Applied Research, and the MTCC Latin American team, Javier Diaz, and myself. How it will work? We extracted from the AIS will be segregated to machine learning and big data analytics so we can calculate the CO2 and CH4 emission from the ship operating with the Panama territorial water. This smart tool will work as a complement to the 4 IMO GSG study because our platform will be customized and local and later in regional areas. Our intention is to develop the stage number 2 and the future, to expand the platform to all Latin American region. I invite you all to visit our website to find more information of our pilot project 3. Based on the SDG 17, the partnership of the goal during this 2021, we have strengthened our relation to key and the multidisciplinary industry player for the benefit of our region in Latin America. Among the participants,
2 more minutes, please, Mr. Vargas.
Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama. Also, it's very important to mention the involvement of the maritime academies and international universities. Also, other important stakeholders. A special mention to the Mr. Alexis from the Panama Canal, who is great support, and the port of the Panama Canal to become a green route. Also to the engineer Edivaldo Peralta from Lloyd Register, who is an active supporter of the MTCC Latin American work. We hope that more and more stakeholders will join us to this purposeful adventure, as our motto declares, working together to promote an efficient and sustainable shipping. Thank you all for your kind attention. I would like to invite you all to follow our digital platform, website, and social media to get involved and know about our project and the future capacity building and other activities. Looking forward to continue working together in close collaboration for a safer, more efficiency, a sustainable maritime future. We are stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you very much there, Mr. Vargas, for your input there from the MTCC in Latin America. And that concludes the roundup from the 5 MTCCs around the world, getting their input on their needs and what experiences they have towards creating innovative collaboration and the ways forwards. Because let's not forget that this forum here is all about discussing the ways forward, about how we can work and collaborate, how the developing countries, the SIDS, the LDCs can actually find the tools and find the innovation practices and models that we may be able to use in the future to speed up their decarbonisation efforts. And I think we can recognise across the 5 MTCCs there the range of different issues that they all face and different challenges and the ways that they're already beginning to address some of those issues. We're going to move now into our next session. We're looking at experience sharing on innovation and the deployment and knowledge sharing opportunities with a focus on the developing countries. We've got 4 presentations, but it gives me a great pleasure now to introduce the perspective of the European Union. And to that, I'd like to welcome Rosalind van der Vliegels, who's the Director, European Commission, the Director General for Research and Innovation. If I'd like you now to share your screen if you're present, and we'll go live to you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you this afternoon. And I also think that the impressive participation this afternoon shows that there's a global recognition that we need to take urgent action, but that there's also a global opportunity to come to a zero-emission shipping sector. So I will share with you in the coming 6 minutes the EU vision and the planned actions on our contribution to the zero-emission shipping sector. And of course, you're all very well aware that in the European Union, we have adopted our European Green Deal, which basically has set out our ambition to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And we have specific legal reduction targets of 55% for all sectors by 2030. So it's very clear that with this ambition that we have set ourselves, we need to make sure that we have the right regulatory framework on the one hand, and also that we have the right investment framework. So on the regulatory framework, we have presented over the summer what we call our Fit for 55 package, where we have made adaptations to our regulatory framework to make sure that our legislation that we have in place is really an enabler also for the industry sectors to reduce and come to zero emissions. So for the shipping sector in particular, we have extended the European Emission Trading Scheme to the maritime sector, and we have made the necessary legislative adaptations to come to sustainable low-carbon aviation, low-carbon alternative fuels for the shipping sector, and also we made the necessary requirements on the infrastructure. Because I think it's really important that we basically have an enabling regulatory framework that covers the entire value chain. Now, on the investment side, we have in the area of research and innovation, Horizon Europe, which is the biggest European framework program for research and innovation ever. We can make investments of up to 95.5 billion euros for the next 7 years, of which at least 35% will be dedicated to climate action specifically. And of course, we also have deployment funds available. So we have, for instance, the ETS Innovation Fund Connecting Europe facility. And the big priority focus that we have is that we want to develop a seamless pipeline of projects where we make sure that the investments that we have been making in research and innovation activities will then be followed up through further deployment financing at the European Union level. For us, the international dimension, of course, is also extremely important. And therefore, we are also contributing to the maritime technological cooperation centers that were mentioned by previous speakers. And we are very much engaged also in mission innovation. So mission innovation has a specific mission on shipping, and I think it really offers a great opportunity also for IMO members to better connect with these activities of mission innovation to make sure that we are cooperating very well also at the global level. Because I think this is really the key in order to make progress. It's very clear also from the IPPC report, we are in no less than code red for humanity. So we need to really join forces together and make sure that we develop common strategic investment agendas in order to decarbonize the whole sector. I would like to say a few more words also on the partnership that we have under Horizon Europe on zero emission waterborne transport. We have launched the first calls for proposals, which will be open for all countries to participate in. We have published the calls in June this year. You can find them online on our website. And of course, there's no silver bullet for the decarbonization of the sector. So we are investing in projects linked to efficiency, new fuels, renewable energy, increasing the electrification and energy storage. We also have launched a call for development of digital twins in the waterborne sector. And we're launching activities also to kickstart and develop further the pre-normative research that should then feed into the development of standard setting. I would like to underline that this partnership that we have on the zero emission waterborne transport is open, very open to new members. For the moment, we have over 100 members covering the entire value chain. But I would really like to encourage participants to see if they can also join this partnership so we can work more closely together. The European Commission is investing 530 million euros in this partnership, which is matched also by industry in-kind contributions of 3.3 billion euros. And we're currently also preparing for the calls that will then be launched for 2023-2024. So finally, to conclude, I would like to say that from the European Union perspective and the European Commission, we are very much open to partnering up, not only with the industry, but also at international level, because we do believe that we need to have this common agenda to make sure that we invest in the right solutions. And we need to invest in multiple solutions. As I said, there's not one silver bullet, but we also need to make sure that we better connect the dots between the investments that we are making in research and innovation and future deployment activities, as well as future international standard setting. So I would like to stop here and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much there for your comments, Ms. van der Vlies from the European Commission. That is the first of our four speakers that we've got on this section where we look at the deployment and knowledge sharing opportunities. And so I'm going to hand over now to Georgie Gerben, Head of Department for Partnerships and Projects, who, of course, they're largely behind this innovation forum that we are all participating in today. Georgie, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many people from all around the world, and I know for some of you it's very early or very late. It is my pleasure to go over about the initiatives, partnerships, projects that IMO has been already engaging in and supporting. Just to note, I would like to recall, I very much like the 3 points we've heard from Norway in the morning. So there was a call on developing countries to participate, and see also zero or low carbon shipping as an opportunity for development. So there is opportunity for participating. As you will see, there are many projects and initiatives that the IMO has been leading or co-leading. And I would also like to encourage all of you who are interested and not participating yet in these to follow them and seek out participation. There's also opportunity for other projects and initiatives to link up, and you will hear more about this when I will come to NextGen. And of course, there's also an engagement with the financial sector and with the industry, which we would like to strengthen even further, because we need to work together on supporting maritime decarbonization in line with the IMO initial GHG strategy. I would like to start with one of our oldest GHG projects. It's actually building on a previous project called GLOMEEP. And the previous project has supported countries to develop national ship emissions reduction strategies, national action plans. So the new project supports now new countries, some of them LDCs and SIDS, to achieve the same. But it's also stepping up. It's going to an area which is also new for IMO, and that is demonstrating technical solutions for reducing GHG emissions. It has been also incremental for knowledge sharing and information sharing between the project countries and also between the strategic partners. And it has been quite unique, and I have to say innovative when it comes to engaging with the private sector. It has established a global industry alliance for low carbon shipping. You will see there are really big names behind, important players across the maritime value chain, who all committed to support the various work streams under the project, share their experience and best practices, and support the work of the project, both when it comes to energy efficiency technologies, to alternative low and zero carbon fuels, and addressing emissions at the ship-port interface. You have heard earlier from all the MTCCs. So this is also one of our biggest and longest standing GHG projects. It's funded by the European Union, by the European Commission, and it has established regional cooperation mechanisms, as you could hear from all the centers earlier. The network completed a range of pilot projects. You've heard about the energy audits, the retrofitting of domestic ships. It concluded various workshops with the participation of more than 100 countries. And it has also achieved 2,000 participating ships to deliver fuel oil consumption data, among many other things. But again, here, if I may say, the innovative element was that we went beyond our usual technical cooperation activities, and we established this regional mechanism that greatly supported knowledge exchange and concrete achievements on energy efficiency on the regional level. We also have a new project which is called GHG Smart. It's a Republic of Korea funded project which specifically recognizes the special needs of LDCs and SIDS when it comes to knowledge and capacity building. And under this project, we are right now establishing a sustainable maritime transport training program on the IMO initial GHG strategy, on the development of national ship emission reduction strategies, national action plans. We have already undertaken a technology need assessment under this program. We have talked with many of the LDCs and SIDS who were interested, as well as with the regional centers, the MTCCs. And we would foresee the first training to take place virtually, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But we hope that from next year on, also on-site training in Korea. but the first one virtually we hope to take place this year, end of the year. And I would particularly like to encourage participants here from LDCs and SIDS to participate in this training and let us know their interest in this training program. We have also another project which is in the making. So we are preparing it together with our regional partner, PEMSIS. You will hear in a bit more about this particular regional project, which is targeting Southeast Asian countries. The uniqueness of this project is that it looks at the whole life cycle of GHG emissions when it comes to transport. So it connects hinterland transport, port, and shipping emissions. And it aims to reduce GHG emissions in the ASEAN region by establishing emission baselines, developing national roadmaps, and also undertaking demonstration projects in the interested countries in this region. We are currently preparing this project, which if it is successfully submitted and accepted by Germany, then it's going to be a German funded project starting next year, again in the ASEAN region. So I would encourage countries from this region, if you are not connected with us yet, please do reach out to us. A project which has been one of the first projects and greatly influential when it comes to its impact in the past is not a GHG project per se. It's the Glow-Falling Partnerships project, which is focusing on the promotion and support of the implementation of IMO's biofueling guidelines. You could ask that why am I talking about this project now? It's not only because by itself is also very interesting as a model, because it also established a very good cooperation mechanism with the private sector and has been greatly influential to promote the guidelines, but also because under this project, there's one very significant and new work stream now, where we are looking at quantifying fuel consumption savings, which are resulting from the implementation of the IMO biofueling guidelines, also in GHG emission reduction. So this is a very unique and very interesting link that is being studied right now by the Global Industry Alliance for Marine Biosafety under the Glow-Falling project. Which I hope that we can present relatively soon, also in IMO upcoming meetings, which will showcase that by the implementation of the guidelines, we may have a win-win situation, both supporting the fight against climate change and reducing GHG emissions, and also fighting invasive species and supporting biofueling in the appropriate manner. I talked a bit before, and I've also seen in the chat box some questions about finance. Finance, of course, is a big question when it comes to maritime decarbonization, especially for developing countries, LDCs and SIDS, who many times have additional challenges when it comes to accessing finance. Based on this realization, it's not a traditional project, but we initiated a forum to be established, and we are co-leading it right now with the World Bank and EBRD. And this forum, which meets on a regular basis, aims to identify both barriers, but also look at financial solutions and opportunities, particularly for developing countries, LDCs and SIDS, that can support them in the investment or in initiating investment and making bankable project proposals in the field of maritime decarbonization. Again, if you're interested as a developing country, LDC or SIDS, or as a financial institution, or as a donor, you are more than welcome to engage in this discussion in FinSmart, and we are happy to provide you more details of it if you reach out to us. Finally, you will hear more about this today too, because we will be launching a new initiative, which some of us like to call as the Google of maritime decarbonization. We aim to support the links and the linking of interested players and projects by a new website, by a new data collection where you will find all the maritime decarbonization projects and initiatives in one place. And we really hope that this new initiative will support engagement and will support more cooperation across interested parties. And of course, we should not forget about the Innovation Forum itself. This, with the gracious support of Norway and of UNEP, was based on the recognition that we really need to support not only innovation when it comes to R&D, but we also need to support inclusive innovation. We need to make sure that innovation deployment is possible, and we should look into models of innovation and best practices that we can share in a forum that will engage key maritime stakeholders across the value chain, across regions, and across interest areas, let it be people who have more interest in traditional maritime areas or in R&D overall, or in climate change matters or other parts of ocean governance. We really hope that this forum will serve this purpose, and you will find useful the discussions that are upcoming and the presentations that took place until now. Thank you very much. Again, if you would like to join any of these initiatives or projects, please do not hesitate to get in contact with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that overview there, Georgie, on the activities that are going on within the Department for Partnerships and Projects. The clue is clearly in the name as to what is happening there. And I think that's very much sort of what you were talking about, highlights the discussions that we're having today when we're looking at the kind of the roadmap that we need to go through and how we're going to move forward with the whole idea of innovation and making it inclusive and clearly making it something that people will be excited to be part of this journey that everybody has to go through. Now, let me turn to our next speaker, Cleopatra Doumbia-Henry from the World Maritime University, and to talk about from the capacity of the WMU in building up the capacity and the role that WMU has in this story. Dr. Doumbia-Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this important event. The maritime industry certainly is standing at the start of one of the greatest technological challenges of our times, as it prepares to transition to a zero and low carbon industry through the adoption of technological innovations. And it is necessary, as a necessary step, it is well known that anthropogenic, that is human-made greenhouse gas emissions have already started affecting the lives of all of us around the world in a concrete way, whether or not we realize it. They are partly responsible for unusual weather patterns, sea level rise and more frequent floods, fires and possible loss of islands within this century. The world is suddenly entering a new era where reduction and the removal of greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping has suddenly become a priority in accordance with the commitments of the Paris Agreement on climate change. The IMO initial GHG strategy, to which we've already spoken, has helped to accelerate the momentum for decarbonization and the efforts being made within the shipping industry. Global cooperation towards the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as air pollutants like sulfur oxide, these are crucial elements for this momentum. Given the scale and the urgency of this global challenge, we realize the inevitable need for global cooperation, and we see it with the participation today. Zero emissions maritime transport can only be achieved in the long term if stakeholders around the world benefit from its development and deployment in a sustained way. Benefits are an incentive for progress, and their global distribution will gauge the global success. The inclusiveness of technological development will thus be key to the success in the deployment of the technologies which are emerging today and are indeed very exciting. We see the emergence of modern wind propulsion technologies, zero carbon renewable fuels, and innovative energy saving measures reminiscent of science fiction. Technologies are evolving as we speak, and there is a great and urgent need for global research, for education, and for the sharing of experiences. WMU is playing its part to advance research, contribute to education, and ensure that the capacities are built worldwide for a sustainable energy technological environment in the maritime sector. Through the Maritime Energy Management Stream at WMU, maritime stakeholders can reduce air emissions and support the UN SDGs, which calls for immediate action on the part of all countries, organizations, and individuals to help achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Of particular relevance to the maritime and ocean fields are those goals relating to climate change and the emission of greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutants in the framework of UN SDG 7 and SDG 13, which is focused on urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. In light of the above, WMU has an important teaching and research role to play. Its educational stream relating to maritime energy management, MEM we call it, is a direct and effective mechanism for addressing greenhouse gas emissions. WMU is strongly committed to UN SDG 7 and 13 and works to support the achievement of a sustainable and energy efficient maritime and ocean industry. WMU is at the forefront of MEM education and research. As of 2016, the MEM specialization was included within our Master of Science program. In 2018, we launched a new postgraduate diploma program in maritime energy management via distance learning. In other words, to broaden the reach of this very important thematic. To date, 62 maritime professionals from 31 developing countries have graduated with a master's in maritime affairs on maritime energy management, thereby ensuring the building of expertise, particularly for developing countries. To date, 34 out of 62 WMU graduates who have specialized in maritime energy management are from Africa. Our graduates on their return home are able to support their ministries and their institutions to understand and to take action to implement the instruments of the IMO. In this way, our graduates are able to participate in the global effort towards zero and low carbon emission technologies being deployed in international shipping. The introduction of our well-received MSc degree and our PG DIP, which is the diploma program in MEM, speaks to our commitment. In addition, the close collaboration with all the MTCCs since they were established is another commitment to maximize the global efforts of the IMO towards the decarbonization of international shipping. I wish to take this opportunity to draw attention to the maritime energy management being one of the research priority areas of WMU. In this respect, the research priority area examines issues with respect to energy management with a view to reducing air pollution, as well as generating and consuming energy in a sustainable way. The problems and the topic requires significant research in understanding and generating innovative approaches to policy making for energy management, the design and the operation of vessels with particular reference to the use of renewable resources of energy and to provide valuable insights into how the maritime industry can contribute substantially and in an accelerated manner to achieving zero low carbon and an energy efficient global future. This research priority area seeks to advance knowledge in maritime energy management by conducting world-class fundamental and applied research in the thematic areas of energy efficiency, regulatory frameworks, renewable energy, labor and social factors related to energy, as well as the economics of energy and energy-related technology and innovation. The thematic areas are addressed using a ship's life cycle perspective, that is, design, production, operation, and recycling, taking into consideration the impact of shipping on oceans, on ports, and on shipyards. Cutting-edge research in maritime energy field and in which the WMU is engaged relates to 4 international research projects, which include the Horizon 2020 funded project called CHECK, the Nordic Energy Research funded project called Kashima, the Nordic Innovation funded research project on cold ironing, and Traffic Curvet, which is a Swedish administration funded project on emission trading system and the impact on international shipping. WMU is therefore contributing significantly in order to achieve the objectives of the UN SDG 7 and 13. And now that the whole portfolio of WMU's field of expertise and interest has now been made clear, it is time for us to take us to the next set of deliberations. But before leaving you, I'd like to bring to your attention at least one very important aspect. WMU issued a major publication entitled Trends and Challenges in Maritime Energy Management, which was published in 2018 and which is very much still at the top of publications related to UN SDG 7 and 13. As we face one of the maritime industry's greatest challenges, we need to take into consideration the big picture and remind ourselves of the need for common strategies. Global research, education, and development, including common funding mechanisms, and will help to ensure a successful development and deployment of zero and low carbon maritime technologies, including low carbon emissions. These innovations will benefit developed and developing countries alike, not only in terms of their infrastructure and their facilities, but also in terms of the expertise, and together will contribute to the global common goals of successfully deploying zero and low carbon emission technologies in the maritime sector. With these words, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very fruitful event.
Thank you very much for your words there, Dr. Dumbia Henry from the World Maritime University, and some of the efforts and energy that's being put into decarbonisation and building up capacity. I see, well noted on the number of people who have passed through the WMU and are now participating in energy management, particularly, as you say, 34 of the 62 in the African countries. Now we're going to move on. We heard Georgie mention a few minutes ago a partnership with PEMSEA, the Partnership in Environmental Management for the Seas of East Asia. We are now going to hear from them, and in particular, Miss Nadine Breseman, with a recorded message. She's based in the Philippines, so we have a recorded message from her on some of the efforts and energies that are being put into place relating to maritime transport from PEMSEA. So the floor is yours.
Good afternoon in Europe and good night here in Asia. Thank you very much for inviting me to join the forum here today. I'm honored to be part of this cohort of speakers. My name is Nadine and I'm presenting from the Philippines. I work since 2016 with partnerships and environmental management for the seas of East Asia. PEMSI is a regional intergovernmental organization and we are specialized in coastal and marine conservation. We act as a secretariat and implementing arm for our 11 partner countries when it comes to sustainable development strategies or marine projects. We are supported by our more than 20 so-called non-country partners such as UNEP. I follow on from the presentation by Georgie by IMO and show you our joint work with various countries in Southeast Asia to reduce maritime transport emissions through innovations. Globally, East and Southeast Asian countries play significant roles in maritime transport, supporting shipbuilding industry or hosting the world's busiest ports. According to UNCTAD, Asia continues to dominate the global maritime trade arena. In 2019, as we see here in the graphic, the region accounted for 41% of goods loaded and 62% of goods unloaded. Asia has strengthened its position as a maritime hub that brings together more than 50% of global maritime trade volumes. In this regard, developing countries in Asia accounted for 76% of all maritime trade load and unload in developing regions. Based on these trends showing increased trade and therefore a growing shipping demand, emissions from maritime transport in Asia may increase 3- to 4-fold by 2050. East and South Asian countries are already undertaking actions to address greenhouse gas emission and climate change and have committed to such efforts in regional and international agreements such as the ASEAN Transport Strategic Plan, PEMSI Sustainable Development Strategy for the Seas of East Asia, the initial IMO GHG strategy, or the UN SDGs. Developing countries are seeking funding for their activities, and PEMSI's regional port training network has developed the idea of reducing emission with a focus on greenhouse gases. There are a lot of ports around the region that are major sources of pollutants. They burn oil and diesel and operate under some pre-alarming conditions. So our Blue Solution concept is a homemade regional project, and together with the IMO team and with National Focus Group, the concept was further developed. I'm very pleased that ICI is supporting our project ideas, and many thanks to Germany. From the beginning, we have concentrated on the question of how to decarbonize the maritime transport sector. And especially in developing countries such as the Philippines or Indonesia, we see that maritime transport is more than just ships. We have 24-hour port activities, and for example, in Manila, more than 6,000 heavy load trucks daily in and out of the port. I thought that this number would be hard to top until we talked to the director of Tanjung Priok port in Indonesia, and he actually told us that they have 15,000 trucks a day on the port area. Maritime transport, including ships, ports, and trucks, is a significant source of greenhouse gases. So when we talk about reducing emission, we have to look at the entire supply chain from producer to consumer and think about operational energy efficiency, low or zero carbon fuels, low carbon infrastructure, and we have to evaluate which innovations and policies, optimized logistics, access to fuel, or even technology solutions can do to further decarbonize the transport. We are currently holding workshops in several countries to draft a fully developed project document and to understand the country's priorities for action. We started with the Philippines, and then we did different workshops in Vietnam and Indonesia, and in 2 days on Wednesday, we have our inception activities in Thailand, and we hope that Malaysia will overtake all of them at the end. With these country partners, we want to identify demonstration pilot projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And Cambodia will participate in the mission baseline activities, and we have already had promising discussions with China, Singapore, Japan, Korea, and Germany to accompany our activities and to define decarbonization instruments as knowledge partners. If the International Climate Initiative is satisfied with our fully developed project document, we can expect a funding of 15 million euro over a period of 5 years. Implementing partners are IMO and PEMSI, and IMO is in the lead. As already stated, the identification of demonstration pilot is the core of our current activities in the preparation phase. We certainly talk about the impact of speed optimization, hull treatment, shore-based power supply, smart ports, and smart communication. We discuss technology innovations and also look at the future of fuels. Here you can see some inspiration, and there are already more concrete ideas from partner countries. So let's have a look to Vietnam. It's pretty impressive. Vietnam has a total of 80,000 kilometers of inland waterways, more than half of which are navigable. Ships cause fewer emissions than trucks, and heavy cargo vehicles account for less than 10% of all road vehicles in Asia, but contribute more than 50% of the transport sector CO2 emission. And there are now discussions to shift part of the freight road transport to the waterways. And to further enhance greenhouse gas savings, we are considering a battery-powered river vessel. There are also ideas to shorten the idling time and to save fuel of vehicles in the port through optimized processes on communication software. Using conveyor pipelines in replacement for roads has already been successfully carried out in Vietnam ports, and there is a need for more such activities. The new deep sea container terminal in North Vietnam, the Hai Phong International, tries to get widely carbon-free in the expansion until 2024 and is open to emission reduction concept, also as a pioneer. In Indonesia, we are still working to identify measures. Ports have unique equipment, especially bulk cargo handling equipment is a very energy intensive, and the intention is to convert the port equipment from diesel to electric. But also the installation of a renewable energy microgrid or battery energy storage system are under review. The port management of Tanjung Priok Port developed a 6-point plan, of which some measures have already been implemented, such as a shore power connection and the emission control from trucks at the gate of 15,000 trucks. The Philippine transport sector is the second biggest contributor to the country's greenhouse gas emission. There is a very exciting partnership construction with regard to the promotion of maritime innovations. Marine universities, the Marina and the Department of Science and Technology are working together on prototypes to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the maritime sector. I've brought along a successful example, which was published last week. It is a construction of a hybrid trimaran powered by both a traditional motor and wave energy. And the multi-hull boat is expected to move more efficiently on the sea, cut average travel times by half, and have a lower carbon footprint. From the same scientific innovation source also comes a tuna fishing vessel that is refitted with a sail to document the savings, the fuel savings, through the use of wind. And we already know from another ICI project in the Pacific that changing the ship design and using a sail can already save 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. We also need to talk about challenges, and I think renewable energy is a big challenge. The climate problem is actually an energy problem. We mainly burn the fossil fuels to produce energy. Ports are intense energy users. And the switch to electric vessels and electric port equipment alone is not enough to reach a CO2-free energy balance. It also needs electricity only from renewable sources. I've brought a graphic from the ASEAN Center for Energy, which I think shows that green energy, in this case, the solar, will continue to be a challenge for ASEAN member states in the coming years. Although green energy has become cheaper, the Philippines still plan the expansion of coal power generation. We see here that solar installation is stagnating at a low level. In contrast, the progress in Vietnam is certainly impressive, driven by a set of tariff and incentive schemes. It shows that energy transition towards green energy is feasible in ASEAN with the right policies in place. But still, the most effective way to start cutting carbon emission is to restore the massive imbalance between the cost of fossil fuels and clean energy. I think also very big challenge, especially for developing countries, is the future of fuels. Currently, there is no alternative fuel that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and is ready to replace traditional marine fuels. Many countries in Asia and also companies have set themselves ambitious emission reduction targets, but it needs low or zero carbon fuels to meet these targets. The shipping industry is working towards a sustainable future, and we already have some good examples of projects in shipping that are trying out alternative fuel solutions. Frontrunners or most famous and promising fuel alternatives are ammonia, hydrogen, methanol, biofuels, or LNG, and maybe also nuclear. LNG works for existing regulation on local pollutants, but it is not a clear low GHG fuel. Biofuels show potential, but only if it can be ensured that actual emission savings in the whole life cycle of the fuels are realized. And the success of hydrogen or other synthetic fuels depends on the use of green energy and the storage possibilities. A wider range of different fuels and ports is likely to put more pressure on developing countries. Uncertainty in investments lead to a wait-and-see attitude. And we should now create the conditions in the ASEAN countries that will enable the rollout of low-carbon fuels and also prepare structures for the need of a multi-fuel society. In addition, the price gap between traditional and low and zero carbon fuels must be closed. Finally, I've brought results from our survey of ports in Vietnam. A total of 19 ports responded, and among other things, we also asked about barriers for greenhouse gas reduction with reference to ship-port hinterland transport. And the greatest challenge here was identified as lack of resources like money or staff and lack of financial investment. From my point of view, we don't have a knowledge problem, but an implementation problem, which in developing countries is very much linked to financing issues. We need to help developing countries to decouple economic growth from energy, as these countries still rely heavily on carbon intensive energies. The importance of climate protection has been recognized in ASEAN. As we can see, there are also already small-scaled and standalone activities to implement greenhouse gas reduction instruments in the maritime sector. IMO's Green Voyage and the Blue Solution Project will help to further transition the maritime transport sector towards a low-carbon future. But we need more funding, like from Germany and Norway, more investors from the private sector, and a lot of support from the banking scene, especially from the development banks. IMO has already initiated one of the most important topics with the Smart Fin Roundtable. CO2 emissions are a global challenge. They do not stop at national borders where they are emitted. We solve all the problems together, but we depend on each national government to decide to do the right thing and act in the name of Mother Earth. And in this sense, thank you for your attention. I'm very much looking forward to the further discussion in this forum, and good night.
Thank you very much there to Nadine Brezeman, Head of Maritime Transport at the Partnership in Environmental Management in the Seas of East Asia, or PEMSEA, as it is generally pronounced. I think that was a very good overview of what PEMSEA are into, and I think there we heard some of the key elements addressed that we've heard from the MTCCs as well. And that will appear during the discussion sessions that we're going to have towards the latter part of this day, and then as we look into some of the partnership examples tomorrow as well. This is a 3-day event, and we've already heard a number of discussions about finance. And of course, in the 3rd day, we're going to get into that heady discussion about the financing needs within this move towards inclusive innovation around the world. Now, we've heard a couple of times before, Georgie mentioned it, the launch of the Next Gen initiative, the online portal that has been supported by the MPA in Singapore and the IMO. So it gives me great pleasure now to hand over to the Next Gen initiative, and in particular to a recorded message here from Ms. Kwa Lei Hoon, who is the MPA CEO. The floor is yours.
Greetings from Singapore, and thank you all for joining us here at the IMO UNEP Norway Zero and Low Emission Innovation Forum. Today, we are officially launching the Next Gen virtual portal with our partners at the IMO. What does Next Gen stand for? GEN stands for Green and Efficient Navigation. It is an IMO Singapore initiative for the global maritime community to foster collaboration on maritime decarbonization. Now, this idea started as a circle of collaboration back in June 2020, when SecGen Mr. Kitak Lim and I were fellow panelists at a UNGC meeting on sustainable ocean business. So NextGen was developed to serve as a circle of collaboration to bring together different stakeholders, including ports, governments, companies, research institutes, to share knowledge on low and zero carbon fuels. Now, it is meant to be inclusive. It is meant to help all stakeholders towards the future of green shipping. Let me now share a little bit more on the steps we have taken since NextGen was announced in September 2020. Singapore and the IMO co-organized the NextGen inaugural meeting on 23rd April during the Singapore Maritime Week. Over 70 international participants from governments, industry, international organizations, and academia attended. We discussed the challenges faced by small island developing states, SIDS, and least developed countries, LDCs, in their decarbonization journey, and the actions that's needed to facilitate collaboration across the maritime and energy supply chain. We then produced a summary report. So today, the NextGen virtual portal comes into play as a one-stop portal bringing together the universe of existing projects. I'm really pleased to announce today that the NextGen portal already encompasses over 140 projects spanning over 500 partners, 13 fuel types, and from a diversity of regions, including Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, Middle East, and the Pacific Islands. In particular, the portal spotlights global collaborative projects led by the IMO and the Maritime Technology Cooperation Centers, MTCCs, which support maritime decarbonization in seats and LDCs through technical assistance, technology transfer, and capacity building. So following NextGen's beta launch, we have already received positive feedback that this portal is very useful. So we are really thrilled to be formally launching it with you today. Finally, building on the data collected through the virtual ecosystem, we have worked with our partners at the National University of Singapore Centre for Maritime Studies on a gap analysis. We hope that these insights will guide NextGen stakeholders in identifying actionable and inclusive solutions. My colleague Han Chang later will share with you some of the top-line findings. So, looking ahead, we encourage all to generously share information and updates about maritime decarbonization projects that you are working on. This will allow NextGen to be consistently updated and users can benefit from them. Use the Contact Us form on the site, which you will see shortly in our virtual tour. And with more projects uploaded, we are confident that this will inspire and catalyze further collaborations to come. The progress we have made with NextGen would not be possible without the hard work of our teams, both at the MPA and the IMO. Singapore is a long-term partner of the IMO, and we greatly value the idea sharing and support that comes with this partnership. So on behalf of Singapore, I would like to express our appreciation to all colleagues at the IMOs who's been involved in this. The IMO's Department of Partnership and Projects, DPP, Public Information Services Department, PIS, and the ICT Department, who have been instrumental in creating NextGen together with us. We also thank all stakeholders who have contributed generously to NextGen's development. So let me now conclude. We'll do a short virtual countdown to the official launch of the NextGen virtual ecosystem. Let us now count down together. 3, 2, 1. NextGen is now live at nextgen.imo.org. Thank you and stay tuned for a short virtual tour of the NextGen website.
Welcome to NextGen, the global and inclusive portal for information on maritime decarbonization. Here, you can find the universe of maritime decarbonization initiatives and search for relevant project information. NextGen has 3 main objectives: raising awareness, identifying opportunities, and forming networks for collaboration and information sharing. With the increasing trends of decarbonization and digitalization in shipping, NextGen supports technical cooperation, capacity building, and technology transfer to help countries attain the goals of the IMO initial strategy. As a partnership between the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore and the IMO, NextGen brings the maritime industry closer to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Importantly, NextGen provides a platform to consolidate and visualize the universe of maritime decarbonization initiatives. If we type in ammonia, curated ammonia-related initiatives are listed. Next, let's select Singapore. As you can see, there are 4 of such projects currently listed. Let's check out the Castor initiative. At one glance, the user can see all the key international stakeholders of this project, relevant details on the project scope, duration, deliverables, and funding. Relevant sources are also included. On the projects page, you may search according to countries, types of funding, and partners to identify key projects of interest. Under categories, there are options to identify projects under the labels capacity building, fuels, infrastructure, and ships. Likewise, users can select the types of funding and available partners. Through selection and filtering, you can further distill initiatives and projects. This is especially helpful if you are doing a scan of all the projects that fall under a particular fuel or technology type, like ammonia, or from a specific country. So if we then select all possible options, this is what we will see. A map populated with decarbonization initiatives. If we have a specific initiative in mind, we can also search for it easily with the project name. For example, the IMO Norway Green Voyage 2050. Once again, the user can see at a single glance all the countries that are involved in this Green Voyage project. Likewise, let's search for the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center for the Caribbean, MTCC Caribbean. It appears here together with all countries where MTCC Caribbean projects are based. Besides being represented geographically, decarbonization projects are represented via a network map which shows the interlinkages between different categories. This is important to examine the link and potential synergies between projects and fuel types, which can help to seed collaborations and reduce resource duplication. For instance, under biofuels, these are the relevant projects. When we click on the Pacific Blue Shipping Partnership, we see these linkages. Next, let's take a look at the Partners page. This is a web page listing the strategic partners of NextGen. If you are interested in joining us on NextGen, click here. Here, you can submit a project to be added to the NextGen platform, ask a question, or indicate your interest to get involved as a project partner. It's easy, just fill in the information and click Submit. Here on the NextGen portal, you can also check out the consolidated news page, to stay updated on the latest news on maritime decarbonization. Likewise, the resources page offers a helpful one-stop landing page where key documents and reports on maritime decarbonization can be found. If you or your organization has done work in this area and wish to share your report or publication on NextGen, feel free to get in touch with us. We hope that you will find the resources on NextGen useful, and we welcome you to submit your decarbonization initiatives to us. NextGen is more than a portal, however. It also aims to identify the key opportunities and gaps in maritime decarbonization to ensure that no country or company is left behind. Let me now pass the time over to Mr. Tan Han Chiang from the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, who will introduce some of the top-line findings from the NextGen Gap Analysis study.
Thank you, Minerva. With the information on the projects that we collected for NextGen, 144 in total so far, we undertook a preliminary analysis with researchers at the National University of Singapore to get a sense of where the maritime sector was in its decarbonization journey. However, before I present the findings, we must qualify that these findings are based on the information that we gathered through open sources and our own contexts. We will most certainly have missed some projects, which is why we strongly urge entities undertaking decarbonization initiatives in the maritime sector to reach out to us through the website. Let us begin. To analyze the projects on the NextGen portal, we first split them into three key building blocks. First, projects related to vessel or onboard technologies, for example, developments in engine and ship design. Second, projects related to infrastructure that produce and deliver alternative fuels, for example, production of ammonia and hydrogen. Third, capacity building projects that promote cooperation, training, and access to funding. For example, the IMO's network of Maritime Technology Cooperation Centers, or MTCCs for short. Let us first start with the building block on vessel and onboard technologies. There are 75 projects in this category. Majority of these projects, more than half, are based in Europe, with roughly a third based in Asia. What we observe is that while majority of the projects were in Europe, these projects tended to be on niche technologies and on smaller ships, such as passenger ferries, with a focus on hydrogen and batteries. However, the projects in Asia tended to be on larger ships, with more interest in the use of ammonia, although there are still projects on other fuels. Based on technology readiness levels, or TRL, of the projects, batteries and biofuels appear to be close to deployment given the large proportion of these projects in the deployment phase. This is perhaps unsurprising given the use of these fuels in land transportation. Hydrogen and ammonia are less mature technologically, but have certainly garnered substantial interest compared to other emerging technologies. Both have relatively high number of projects in the basic research and development phases, and a high number of projects overall. Let us move on to infrastructure projects. There are 52 projects in this category. Like projects related to vessels, the majority of these projects are based in Europe. Interest in hydrogen and ammonia is again more substantial, with methanol and ethanol projects coming in a distant third. Like projects related to vessels, the projects on hydrogen tend to be focused on smaller, short-haul vessels, such as ferry services, or projects on ammonia tend to be on large, long-haul vessels, particularly large container vessels. Battery projects tend to be focused on charging infrastructure, suggesting that this may be one key hurdle to commercial deployment. Europe appears to be a leader in the infrastructure for hydrogen and methanol/ethanol. On the other hand, there is a more even distribution of interest in ammonia. The distribution of infrastructure projects is of importance. The successful adoption of an alternative fuel for long-haul shipping would require a network of bunkering nodes across different regions, and thus require a more even distribution of readiness. Lastly, capacity building. There are 17 projects that fall in this category, significantly less than the previous two categories. The projects are generally evenly distributed around the world, the most number of projects being global in nature, and we take global to mean involving 2 or more regions or continents. The majority of the projects are coordinated by the IMO, with the rest being self-initiated by industry or specific regions. These projects tend to be multifaceted in nature, meaning they cover various aspects such as funding, leadership, and training. Naturally, the overwhelming majority of projects focus on cooperation. So what do these numbers and observations tell us? Based on the analysis we have performed and the knowledge we have of the regions and technologies, it appears that what we are seeing reflects the differing regulatory landscapes and maritime interests of different regions. There are also differing regional business interests. This is partly long-standing, but also related to different regulatory landscapes. The decarbonization agenda in Europe has led to keen interest in technologies that can be applied to intra-EU trade and passenger transport. Some European companies are long-standing leaders in certain niche onboard technologies, such as ship engine design and development. Asia, with its primary export markets in Europe and US, is perhaps more interested in long-haul shipping, given the importance of the East-West and Trans-Pacific routes to their destination markets. Asia is also the heart of shipbuilding. When it comes to capacity building, the fewer number of projects are not necessarily a concern, given the nature of intergovernmental cooperation. What is perhaps more important is that these projects meet the needs of countries, are sustainable in the long run, and are as inclusive as possible to enable countries to exploit the opportunities that decarbonization offers. Ultimately, what we have found so far is that decarbonization in the maritime sector is underway. The multiple fuels and technologies we see is natural of any transition, but one area that we may perhaps need to pay attention to is the development of common infrastructure across different regions to ensure that long-haul shipping will have sufficient supply nodes to make the use of alternative fuels a reality. Thank you, and I hope you found this analysis useful.
Thank you very much there to Tan Hang Chan and Minerva Lim and the MPA CEO Kwa Lee Hoon for their introduction of the Next Gen website, co-funded by the IMO and the MPA Singapore. And I think there'll be a lot of people very interested in going onto that site. I certainly will be soon to have a look at the projects. It was interesting to see finally, and I was good to see on that map that there are a number of projects spread all over the world. And as we heard from Tan Hang Tran, that there are a number of those projects are funded and part of IMO work as well. So having now brought us through these parts and these sessions, the 4 parts of today, looking at the state of play, looking at what the various MTCCs are doing and what they've done since they were formed, and state of play from the partnerships and projects team at the IMO. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce a panel session that we've got to actually look through some of these thoughts that we've had and to put it into perspective. So it does give me a great pleasure if I could ask them to turn on their microphones and their webcams to introduce to you His Excellency Laurent Parente. He's the ambassador and permanent representative of the Republic of Vanuatu to the IMO, and he's also the IMO TCC chair. We've also got Mr. Madhu Nair, Chairman and Managing Director of Cochin Shipyards in India, Rear Admiral Peter Brady, Director General Maritime Authority of Jamaica, and Nancy Karigthu, who's Principal Secretary, State Department for Shipping and Maritime in the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure in Kenya. So a good welcome to the 4 of you. And if I could start with you, Mr. Parente, to give your thoughts about what you've heard today and what you see as some of the key challenges, because tomorrow we're going to see a little bit more about some of the models of innovation, you could say, and how things are going to potentially move forward. And we've seen things from the Next Gen platform. Perhaps you can give your first thoughts here, having coming to the latter part of this first day today.
Thank you very much, Craig. Can you hear me?
I certainly can. Yeah,
excellent. Well, good day to all, and thanks for giving me the floor. Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone and all the speakers that have intervened, that have given us very interesting information. What really struck me the most is that from every speaker that have intervened so far, from the Secretary General of the IMO, the UNEP Executive Director, but also the Minister from Norway, is the need to support green transition, of course, and not to leave anyone behind, and to promote cooperation and to learn from each other. And that I think is crucial in this exercise. I've heard the UNEP Executive Director talking about the operational requirements and the need for governments to think creatively, and that I think is crucial as well. What I was really surprised of, and when I was listening to the independent expert, and Khalid, his name, was the fact that most of the projects that have been presented that are currently going on in the sector are large-scale projects, and not necessarily small-scale projects that would have an interest to small island developing states, for instance. And I think that has to be taken into consideration. And also noting that many small island developing states are very often not taking part to those projects, which I think is a potential barrier for those countries and some of the region to take on board new technologies. Again, knowledge transfer, innovation transfer, and the lack of funding has been strengthened and highlighted by most of the speakers. And it is very true that in all those projects, the financing is an issue. And listening to all those NTCC's presentations that were very informative, we realized that what is putting a real barrier to those projects to continue is the finance. And we realized that despite the lack of financing, some of the projects have led us to understand that there are already technologies available that could be useful, that could be implemented by some of the small island developing states. And I take the example of the NTCC in the Pacific, who obviously, and I will refer to that, has implemented a project in my own country, in Vanuatu, that has been proven to be workable by using solar panels on a ship, by reducing greenhouse emissions by, I think, 30% and saving like 30,000 euros a year in annual operational cost. We realized that there are technologies available. There are things that could be implemented, but that just cannot be implemented because there's a lack of money. And it's where I'm coming now. I had a ship owner on the phone just yesterday in Vanuatu, and I was talking about those issues about finance. And he said, do you think I could go in a bank in Vanuatu and ask for money to convert my ship? I mean, there's no way, because the risk is too high and the banking system will not allow us to do that. And that's where I think that the common point of all those presentations is finance. And it's where, if we don't find ways, and I think that this topic will be discussed later on throughout the forum, if we don't find ways to finance those new technologies and present technologies that have been on the market for years, there's no way we can make any improvement in our region specifically. There are operational requirements that could be workable, such as the maintenance of engines in our regions, the maintenance of hull, the use of better quality fuel that could be already implemented, and that is simply not because of money. The other thing I was struck about was the number of projects going on. There's a huge number of projects going on. And when you look at all those projects for small countries like small island developing states, which have obviously a lack of human resources, a lack of finance, sometimes a lack of expert knowledge, then we tend to be, a bit lost in all those projects. And I wish, in a way, we could find ways to bring to countries like mine a sort of, I keep talking about toolkit, a sort of a leaflet that will give a proper understanding of what has been done, what is available, what could be done, and if you want to do better, where should you go? On which door should you knock to get money? And that is crucial. And last one I'd like to make is to find ways to find an interconnection between all those projects. And I think there should be cooperation on the linkages between, for instance, the GSG Smart Program led by Korea, the Green Voyage 2050, the FinSmart program by IMO, in understanding the needs for safe, reliable, cost-effective, environmentally friendly, and sustainable shipping services to remote Pacific Island states. Because let's not forget that those ships are actually delivering food that are essentials to the people living in the islands. And I think that should be remembered. Let's not focus to the future. Let's focus to what is already available and that could be implemented. The only problem is the money. That's what I would retain at the moment. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. And I think that's an important element, the money side of it. We'll come to that again, I think, during this panel session. But I want to just go back to one of your comments on actually not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of technologies you said that are available. It raises the question, and I'm going to come to this question with Madhu Nair next, if I may, but just your thoughts, just 2 seconds on your thoughts. Should we be expecting the developing countries, particularly the SIDS, to reinvent the wheel, to do this themselves? Or are we better off leaving this to those countries, those companies that are already engaged in a lot of the technology efforts as well? What are your thoughts on that ability to utilize or reinvent the technologies for certain developing countries?
Oh, thanks a lot, Craig. And greetings from India. Very relevant point here, because when we're talking about decarbonization, again, let's say we can draw the line into 2 large buckets. One is high sea shipping, and which the the analysis from the next gen platform was showing like significant part happening in Asia on the larger adoption of fuels like ammonia, methanol coming in. On the other bucket, short sea shipping, ferries, near coastal, where it could be technologies which are significantly mature already, let's say batteries, fuel cells, and hybrid versions, for which at least what's happening today, Europe, Scandinavia, most parts of West Europe, lots of pilot projects in good levels of maturity. Small projects already rolled out in many of the West European states. So coming to your question, should you reinvent the wheel? I think the topic which has throughout these discussions over the last 2 hours, what we have seen is inclusive cooperation. So if we can stick on to inclusive cooperation, rather than reinventing the wheel, we can probably create a better wheel from whatever we already have. We can actually improve things. And let's say for a country like India, we could create more country-specific requirements. Certain things will have to be new, but certain things we can actually start from whatever is actually available on the table. For example, like my company, like
I'm afraid we seem to have lost you there, Mr. Nair. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. That's good.
Yeah. So what I was saying is 3 large projects, all of which we have significant international cooperation. We are working on a large urban metro transportation scheme. I'm from a city called Kochi, down south in India, about 2.1 million population. But we are implementing a very large, one of the world's largest water metro schemes, as we call it. These are 75 hybrid electric boats. And there is significant cooperation because the larger funding has come in from KfW of Germany, classification with the Norwegians, DNV, electrics from Siemens, Germany involved. The complete design and engineering is by ourselves, but we have tested it in Marin in the Netherlands. Knowledge has been shared here. And when knowledge has been shared, what are we creating? We are creating one of the largest urban transport ecosystems, which can actually significantly impact human livelihood. I'm today involved in another project, which is part of the Norway's green shipping program, which is creating the water drones, the sea drones, a company called ASCO, Euro trailers across the Norwegian fjords. And we in Cochin Shipyard in India, we are building these vessels. Today, the lead partners are Kongsberg and Masterly from Norway. These kind of cooperations, if we can have, I think we can create a better world, good for everyone. Big countries like ours, the marketplace is here. We don't have to reinvent, we can cooperate, and I think we can take it to the next levels. We on ourselves, we are developing with Indian technology, hydrogen fuel cells. A hydrogen fuel cell vessel, we are ready to roll out, and we are today looking for the initial pilot projects. We have sort of lined up the funding, but as was coming in very clearly, funding is a big issue. As we move into pilots, probably we may be able to roll out. But when we get into the larger scheme of things, like what we are doing in Kochi, 50, 60 boats to change the landscape of a city, I think we need some green funding, and we would really bank on probably European funding to come in to alter lives on the grounds.
Good, thank you very much for that. I'm going to just move away from the funding discussion a minute now and go to Rear Admiral Peter Brady, because one of the elements that we've been talking about during the course of today, Rear Admiral, does relate to capacity. From your perspective as from Jamaica, what's your perspective on the Jamaican ability to be part of this decarbonisation story? What are the key challenges that you've heard about today that would resonate with you, that you recognise as part of the challenges that a country like Jamaica faces?
Oh, well, thank you very much, Craig. It's a real pleasure to be participating in this timely event, especially when we look and recall almost unapologetic mood displayed by the partners of the 150 Industrial Leaders and Organization, who last week called for action to enable full decarbonation of the shipping industry by 2050. That has really put us on guard, and we're very, very happy that that has taken place. Jamaica is very happy to be a part of the Caribbean, where the MTCCs operates out of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have been a leading partner in that over the past few years. Some of the challenges that we see coming out of this kind of forum, again, reflects the kind of situation, financial situation that countries in our region face, whereas we may not be able to take up on the technological advances that are required in order for us to decarbonize shipping. We can at the same time, and are very fortunate to have governments that are willing to provide incentives, for instance, in port areas, to give incentives to ships, for instance, for being green, so to speak. And those incentives in coordination with the various agencies, because in some of our Caribbean countries, we have different agencies operating ports, as do administrations. And we can propose that incentives are given to green ships who come into our ports. And that's very, very important for us. We can look at things, for instance, like the maritime single window. And as Jamaica is a part of a group now that's going to benefit from this maritime single window concept, it is important for us to understand that efficiency of shipping leads to better consumption of fuel, and that is part of the whole process. So our policies have encouraged, for instance, in Jamaica and in many of the other Caribbean countries, the enabling environment. We have developed an enabling environment to encourage the use of, for instance, better fuels like LNG. And that same kind of enabling environment can be used to encourage the use of zero carbon fuels. One of the problems we have in the region here is that we have very old fleets of domestic ships. And in truth and in fact, it probably is good money chasing bad if we start to try to modernize these vessels. But what we can do is teach them to be more efficient and also to take on the new fuels that will be introduced. We are involved in innovation as we reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. For instance, in Jamaica, we have solar and wind that can be used to reduce the cost of electricity on ports to support the cost of coal island. Investments could be via PPP, where the government is not shouldering the capital costs. And that's important for us because these are massive investments, and such measures as PPPs can help to produce, can bring in these kinds of arrangements. And so I think that this forum has been very, very important for us. It has also shown that our NTCs are doing an incredible job, and we're happy to see that at the last meeting, which Mr. Parante chaired, the TC meeting this last week, we've made a proposal for these MTCs to be extended further because of the work that they're doing. Our experience in these transformational projects that the IMO and MTCCs have done have been tremendous to help us with our knowledge base, to build up our capacity in the area of energy efficiency and emissions abatement. And our legal policy institutional framework is now building up sufficiently to be able to look at and arrange for better arrangements for dealing with these situations about energy efficiency on ships. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much there, Rear Admiral, for your input. And it's good to see that there is so much going on around these various regions, and that there is, even if it's, there's a lot of work to be done everywhere. but it's good to see the effort and the energy that is going in on a policy level, as well as from individuals as well. Could I turn now to Nancy Karigvu from Kenya, please, just to get your input about how you've been working with the MTCCs and how you see some of the challenges being faced from that region, from Kenya and from the Africa continent.
Thank you very much, Craig, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants. First of all, let me start by acknowledging and really thanking the EU, the IMO, and NOWE for organizing, and UNEP for organizing this forum. It's been a very rich 2 hours to learn from one another, and particularly to hear what's going on around the world and learn what we can benefit from each other. Now, first of all, let me start by acknowledging the great work that the MTCCs are doing. I think we've had very positive reports from all of them in terms of the projects they're doing and generally the level of work that has happened. And I think, let me thank the IMO and the EU for this very innovative initiative for setting them up. Now, when I come to the region and what MTCC Africa is doing, I think some of the issues that you've raised in terms of challenges manifest themselves very much here because, like the presenter for MTCC Africa said, we are dealing with an island continent that is vast, different regions and different approaches. We're talking of working with 42 countries, and out of those 42 countries, to begin with, which makes the issue of capacity building very, very important and very central to what we are doing and very critical to the journey to zero emissions and implementation of the IMO initial strategy. Only 13 of the countries have ratified MAPL, and we begin to talk about building the awareness, talking to each other in the implementation in terms of putting up the framework. And you begin to see some of the challenges that we have in the region. And then also we talk about, for example, I'll share that we had a convex in March this year. And in terms of innovations, we had 15 exhibitors and only 3 of them were from Africa. And even then, the 3 of those ones were not fully, from the continent. It's startups and the companies that have got a mixture of shareholding or participation from Europe. So you begin to see that, we've got our work cut out for us, but we appreciate the support that we are getting from development partners from IMO in terms of walking the journey and not being left behind, because like we've heard from the presenters, the climate change has no boundaries, and therefore we need to be part of the solutions. Now, from MTCC Africa, some of the projects we've had in terms of raising awareness, raising capacity, getting zero, the database to work with. We need to replicate. Unfortunately, COVID came and put a spanner in the works, and therefore we've been getting requests to undertake more and to distribute more the work that we are doing to bring in more players into this in terms of countries, and this cannot be gainsaid on what we have to do. But all is not lost, and I'm glad that my colleague Peter Brady has mentioned some of the things that we can do, because it's expensive, but I guess we can use local, or may I say that we can use what we have. But the problem is the capacity and the awareness and the talking together and the financing to be able to do that. And that's why the work of the MTCC is very, very important in terms of raising awareness and getting buy-in from not just one country, but a region-wide approach. For example, if I may build on what Captain Brady said in terms of using the single window and creating efficiencies in terms of the port industry, because they are the ones, if we look at it from some of the studies we've done, that's where you get concentrations of issues coming up. And just in time principle, ships coming into port only when there is allocation of bird and therefore not bringing in, the greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore serving them in an efficient and effective manner to reduce some of those emissions from within the ports. Also, the cold ironing shore power infrastructure, but most important, being able to use the natural resources like the solar-based. We are an island continent that in most parts has 366 days of summer in a year, and being able to, bring in what we can use from that, then that becomes very, very important to be able to even reduce further the costs of having shore-based electricity, but tapping into the natural resources. And also, of course, like has been said, the promotion of alternative fuel for ships. And the private sector then becomes very, very important in terms of coming on board in understanding and becoming part of the solutions in addressing some of these issues, which then brings the issue, the big elephant in the room in terms of financing. How do we even bring in our banking? Mr. Nair from India talked about the local banks also getting buy-in, so that we are also becoming part of the solutions in terms of creating the finances. How do we bring them and create projects that they can then also become part of the solutions, and they see the need to do that. And I think I want to keep it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, there are a number of key points that I think from the four opening comments that I hear then, in terms of the relationship between the public and the private sector when we start to discuss this evolution, when we talk about the building up of the innovation within the developing world, and then building into that, as was just mentioned, the buy-in from the banks to create projects that are bankable, to use a phrase that I recently came across, and then building in other efficiencies around this. Now, clearly there's a big difference between Kenya and Africa, with large populations, large ports, Vanuatu, smaller ports, smaller population, India, large population, and Jamaica, smaller population. So there's a difference here between the number of people, and I think, Mr. Parente, you alluded to this, the number of people that you've got within your country that can actually be part of this transition. So let me take this discussion then into the issue of capacity building, and how can your regions contribute to this global decarbonisation effort of the sector? Do you see it being a case that you need to bring in the innovation solutions, the models from externally, or do you think you have the capacity? Is there the startup industry? Is there the innovation already there, ready to come out if you find the right financing angle? So really what I'm asking there is, what sources of innovation do you think your four regions can actually tap into to start building up the impetus for what we need to see here? And please, if I could start with yourself, Mr. Parente, for your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I think that and you rightly mentioned that, about the size of the country and the financial means of the country is obviously a barrier to innovation. I don't think we have to look into new technologies. We may, as I said earlier, use what is already available. And then that would mean not having to invest in any new technologies. As I said earlier, there are on the market potential means to reduce CO2 emissions from domestic shippings at the moment that are just not being implemented for obvious reasons of lack of financing. And here again, it's an issue of the size of the country. And here again, if you look at the quality of the fuels that we have in the region, if you look at the market of domestic shipping and how much money it is made and how much money it is possible to invest, you quickly realize that even the maintenance of a ship becomes a challenge for many ship owners in the region. And it's not just for Vanuatu. I guess that's the same in many countries in the region, where simple change would, I think, drastically improve the situation. And it's just what we need at the moment. So when you talk about financing, about new innovation, I don't think we have the means to do that. Let's be realistic. I mean, obviously, those new technologies will come from developed countries, not developing countries such as small island developing states. But those countries can think out of the box and apply simple tools, simple techniques to get that to improve their operational, the operational of their own ships. That is possible. What is missing often is probably the need to transfer that knowledge. The whole region is aware about the issue, and I can say that the Pacific as a whole is very much involved in reducing CO2 emissions in international shipping and in domestic shipping. They are. But what remains an issue is when you go down to the ship owners operating their own ships, then you quickly realize that there's a gap of knowledge and there's a gap of money. And it's where we have to find a way. I know I keep coming back to money, but that's the sad reality where if we want to move forward, we need to get money. And here, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying knocking on the door of the bank locally, as I said earlier, it's not going to work. We know that. We know that. From experience, we know that. Those local banks will have to be backed up by bigger multilateral developing banks to ensure that they will invest in those not even new technologies, but what is already available, because we don't have to go too far. New technologies would imply also new expert knowledge that we may not have. So sometimes we don't have to go too far. Simple could be workable. And I think that should be remembered. That's what I'm saying. We can move already ahead, but we are not, for the reasons I explained earlier.
Good. Thank you very much there. If I can move on quickly to Mr. Nair. For your thoughts then from that Indian perspective. I know that there is a very vibrant startup community in India. Is much of that focused on the shipping industry, the maritime sectors?
We have a lot of startups today coming into these new technology areas, and in fact, what we are seeing today is like it's quintessential global. So the startup guys, like they move across wherever the technologies are there, wherever the frameworks are there. And that's very important, because when I say frameworks, let's say river transportation, a speaker sometime back was alluding to river transportation systems in East Asia. We have excellent developed Rhine river water transportation systems in Europe. We try to mix and match this, something that's, you can't take something out of Europe straight away into the rivers in India. But then robust technologies can actually be adapted here. So if we can shift the frameworks, it works in India. When we talk about startups, let's say you have niche on certain parts, but then you don't have the.
I'm afraid we just lost your audio again there, Mr. Nair.
Full ecosystem. Are you getting me now?
Yes. No, we've lost you again, I'm afraid. No, we seem to have lost you. Let me just pause it there with you, please, Mr. Nair, if I may. And I'd like to take that same question, that same thought over to Rear Admiral Peter Brady.
Thank you very much, Craig. We have a small population, small financial base, very small GDP. And most of all, we have a very insignificant fleet size. So we therefore need to look at the fleet, hopefully that the ship owners will be observing the various rules for energy efficiency and low carbon requirements. And of course, from our administration perspective, with the small amount of vessels that we have in our fleet, we don't believe that there would be a problem in them observing the rules for energy efficiency and low carbon requirements. However, I think we have to come back to what we can do with what we have. We have ports that these ships trade to. So we just have to make sure that these ships that come to our ports are green ships, that they're in compliance, and that we try to ensure that we put in place the means by which they can receive incentives for trading at our ports while observing all the rules of energy efficiency and low carbon. As small developing countries, we can only do that. Plus, we need to make sure that our people, our port state control inspectors, for instance, our marine administration, or other agencies that have to interact with the ships, that they ensure that these vessels are in fact in compliance with all of the rules. That is very, very important for us. But providing incentives and an enabling environment is what we come back to. The same business model that we use for doing that can be used for instance, vessels that use zero carbon fuels. The NTC showed us that we have older ships in the region who cannot benefit from innovation in this area. They have shown us that. So what we have to do, therefore, is to reduce the dependence on the fossil fuels and just ensure that we create conditions for the vessels that trade at our ports to be in compliance. You know, one of the things I'd like to float is that let us ask every bank in our countries, every financial institution. I mean, the situation is really very, very bad now. It's grave. Ask them to put 1% of their profits into educating our people and in enabling helping to enable the environment for this low carbon and zero carbon. I would like to suggest that, and I will have a word with our Minister of Finance to make a point there. Thank you.
Thank you very much there, Rear Admiral Peter Brady, for setting that challenge around the world there. If I could go to just finally to Nancy Karikto, just for a couple of, just 1 or 2 minutes, please, on your thoughts there, please. We've nearly come up to the deadline for finishing today's 3 hours, but your thoughts now, please.
Okay, let me say that like it has come out, there is room for encouraging the private sector to be part of the solutions. And I want to cite an example. Last Friday, I had one of our main banks in my office, and the discussion went around climate change issues and how they could become a part of the solution. And I want to say that today I already have a letter from them because they want to be encouraged. I mean, they want me to arrange for them to meet other people, the players in the industry, to see where they can plug in. And I believe that if we raise awareness enough, if we package ourselves in a way that they can understand, then maybe there is ground and there is room for more collaboration. And also, you touched about the technology. I think with our young people, if I may cite the example of Kenya, we have a very innovative young group of people. And if we build capacity and also raise awareness enough, then I believe that we may have room for some of the simple solutions like I was talking about in terms of creating the infrastructure to use solar, not necessarily the one that we have to use electricity. So those are some of my thoughts. So it's not all doom and gloom. We can create from what we have if we spread the message wider. The question is if we have enough time, and there is the real issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm glad you said it's not all in doom and gloom, because that's a very good way to end the first day. There's a lot of challenges, but I think what we've seen over the course of this day is there's a number of projects, there's a number of people willing to be part of the solutions. We've started to have this discussion about collaboration and about ways that we can actually communicate with each other and create that cooperation and collaboration, not just between the developed world and the developing world, but I see this conversation south-south, this developing world to the developing world. What can the developing countries also share with each other about some of the learnings that they've got, and some of the optimism, I would say, some of the ways that they're finding the solutions, maybe building up the startups, maybe building up the way that they can actually work with their administrations, as Rear Admiral Peter Brady said, and as we heard that just then from Nancy Karikto, is about that discussion with the banks and about the non-maritime players as well. And we've had these discussions today when we've seen about some of the elements. So that draws just about to a close for today. Tomorrow, we're going to find a little bit more about some of the successful models that we see in the developed and the developing regions, maybe some of these models of innovation will offer some thoughts to people about, hey, this is an idea that I could take and translate into my region, into my country, and be able to take part. So hopefully we're going to give you additional food for thought tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow evening, depending on your time zone, of course, as we look at some of the projects that are going on, working on decarbonisation with the maritime sector. And of course, you had it alluded to earlier today. There's the announcement of the CARE project, a coordination between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the International Maritime Organization. And then we've got the panel sessions where we look at some of the key elements that we're going to have. We're going to learn from the discussions tomorrow morning, take on board these thoughts that we've had today, and we have some roundtables towards the latter part of tomorrow's session. That will all then build into what we're going to discuss on Friday. And this is really where we start that deep discussion about financing, about maritime decarbonisation. We're hearing more about the FinSmart programme. We talk to financial experts about some of the models that they may see as needed. And then we discuss cooperation around the maritime value chain. It's a great pleasure to be part of this today. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow and having an equally good discussion with an equally engaged and attentive participation. Remember, you can still use the chat to engage with us, ask your questions. We'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. And I could just add one more thing. Just be sure to join us tomorrow morning and just be ready to take part in the discussions, take part in being part of finding the solutions that we're looking for towards greater, closer collaboration towards innovation. Thank you very much for today. Good night, or good morning, or good day.